Virgo, 7 places you should never go. Warning from the universe. You think you know why you avoid certain places. People look at you and assume it's just a matter of aesthetics, organization, or perhaps a perfectionism that can't tolerate dirt. But that's just the surface. The convenient lie you let the world believe because it's easier than explaining the truth. The truth is that your nervous system doesn't just see an environment, it translates it. It scans the invisible geometry of space, senses the static in the air, reads the frequencies left there by people who have passed through. You are a sponge for atmospheres, and it is precisely because of this internal architecture, this ability to exhaustively process everything around you, that the universe is sending a clear warning. There are 7 specific physical places, 7 coordinates on the map of the everyday world, where you should never enter. It's not superstition. It's a matter of preserving your sanity and your vital energy. If you step into these spaces, your internal radar collapses, and you begin to carry burdens that are not yours. The first physical place you should never set foot in is someone else's junk room. I'm not talking about normal mess, the natural disorder of a busy day. I'm talking about those rooms in the homes of acquaintances or relatives that have become cemeteries of abandoned objects. The back room, where everything that is no longer useful is thrown, accumulating stagnant energy that can negatively affect your well-being and harmony. When you cross the threshold of such a place, the air suddenly feels dense. Your breath becomes short. What others see as just stacked boxes and old furniture, your mind perceives as postponed decisions. The extreme disorder is, in fact, the materialization of the emotional paralysis of those who live there. And since your nature is to fix, optimize, and heal, your brain begins, without your consent, to try to resolve that chaos. You enter a state of mental overheating, expending an absurd amount of energy trying to invisibly organize the stagnant life of another. You leave exhausted with an inexplicable headache because you absorb the inertia of the environment. The universe is telling you to stay away because you can't fix the mess that the other person refuses to look at. The second place is the waiting room of a chaotic emergency room. Hospitals are places of healing, yes, but there are certain waiting rooms where the system has failed, where the air conditioning is broken, the lighting flickers in a pale shade, and people are crammed together, waiting for hours without any answers. For someone with your sensitivity, entering an environment where systemic chaos and silent despair meet is a lethal poison. You don't just feel sorry for those people. You feel the structural failure of the place hurting your own body. You perceive the inefficiency, the lack of protocol, the lost stairs. Your inherent desire for things to work as they should clashes directly with the raw reality of human powerlessness. Collective anxiety penetrates your skin like tiny needles. You start wanting to get up, organize the queue, solve the attendance problems, because the inefficiency screams in your ears in a way that no one else seems to hear. But you know you can't solve it. And this discrepancy between what your critical eye sees needs to be done and the impossibility of doing it is something that brutally consumes your peace. It leaves a feeling of tightness in your chest, an unresolved urgency. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The guide, the divine wisdom that guides your zodiac sign to a purposeful life, isn't about superficial predictions. It's about the architecture of your mind. It's a tool for those who need to stop absorbing the chaos of the world and start building their own protective walls. Something you, with your sensitivity, always knew you needed, but perhaps didn't know how to access. You're hearing this now because a part of you is exhausted from entering spaces that drain your light, exhausted from trying to fix what's already broken inside. The universe is giving you a sign to act and take control of your own energetic space now without delay. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now, download your copy. Tell me in the comments, what was the last physical place you entered and felt your energy completely drained in a matter of minutes? That invisible weight is still there, isn't it? That recent memory of a space that stole your shine. This leads us directly to the third place you shouldn't set foot, the purposeless open-plan office, that toxic work environment where there are no walls, but gigantic walls of gossip and silent competition. Imagine that room lit by white fluorescent lights, the constant noise of keyboards, the disguised murmurs near the coffee machine. For some people, this is just the corporate world. For you, it's a sensory minefield. Your natural gift for observation becomes your greatest tormentor in this physical space. You notice the envious look your colleague disguised with a smile. You hear the passive-aggressive tone in the manager's voice 3 desks away. You map, in fractions of a second, the entire network of falsehood and incompetence that sustains that space. And the worst part, you continue to be pressured to deliver perfection while navigating this sea of intentional mediocrity. Being physically confined for 8 hours a day in a room where the energy is dense, artificial, and hypocritical shuts down your ability to create. You begin to wither, your intuition is silenced, and you start to doubt your own competence simply because you are breathing the air of people who feed off the sabotage of others. When you realize the invisible weight you carry, trying to survive amidst the moral chaos of others, exhaustion sets in. And it is precisely to heal this burnout that reading The Divine Wisdom That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Purposeful Life becomes urgent. This material reveals how to shield your keen perception, transforming what was once a burden into an impenetrable shield. You no longer need to be the filter for the emotions and intentions of others. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. The fourth place is sneaky. It seems harmless, even charming to some. I'm talking about excessively cluttered antique shops, dimly lit underground thrift stores or pawn shops where the air has that unmistakable smell of old dust and locked away past. For you, entering a physical place where thousands of objects have been left behind out of necessity, grief, or bankruptcy is not a pleasant experience. Objects carry memories. The old armchair someone sold to pay off a debt, the stained mirror that reflected tears you never saw. Your mind, always operating at an analytical and empathetic frequency, begins to try to process the fragmented history of each of those items. The accumulation of stagnant memories in these physical spaces creates a kind of white noise in your head. You touch an object and, instead of fascination, you feel a diffuse sadness, a melancholy that doesn't belong to you. Your physical body begins to reject the environment. Your hands get cold. The urge to go outside and breathe fresh air becomes unbearable. You shouldn't frequent these repositories of other people's energy because your pure and filtering nature ends up acting as a spiritual air purifier, pulling the ethereal dirt from that space into yourself. This feeling of absorbing memories and pains that aren't even yours is what paralyzes your natural brilliance. The digital book, The Divine Wisdom That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Purposeful Life, was written to rescue those who have this exact sensitivity. It teaches you to separate what is yours from what is residue from the environment, cleansing your frequency so that you can return to operating at your maximum potential without interference from other people's pasts. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. The fifth place is the crowded underground with no visible escape route. The subway station at rush hour, the subterranean concert hall where ventilation is terrible and the crowd is crammed together. You don't have claustrophobia in the clinical sense, you have energetic claustrophobia. When you enter a physical underground space, cramped and overcrowded with strangers, your vital sense of control malfunctions. You like to know where the exits are, You like to have control over your own body and your range of action. In these places, the human mass acts as a single desperate creature, and you find yourself swallowed by the heavy breathing of the crowd, the muffled sound, the human heat radiating stress, the smell of haste and irritation. All this collides with your need for order, coolness, and predictability. Your racing mind tries to calculate all the risk variables, anticipate movements, foresee the logistics of how to get out of there unharmed. The computational effort your brain makes in 15 minutes inside a crowded tunnel is enough to deplete your energy for the rest of the day. The universe asks you to respect the limits of your subtle biology. Don't force yourself to be where the air doesn't circulate. The sixth physical place is the home of those who pretend to be your friends, but where envy is ingrained in the very walls. You know exactly who I'm talking about. That impeccably tidy house where coffee is served in beautiful cups, but the air is icy and heavy. You enter the living room and something in your stomach churns. The conversation is polite, smiles are on faces, but your internal system detects the dissonance. You notice the dust hidden beneath the rug of their words. The compliments sound like little pinpricks. You, with your trained eye for seeing the hidden workings of everything, perceive the veiled hostility in the way the lady of the house crosses her arms or the way the host averts his gaze. Being in that physical environment is like walking barefoot on broken glass. You can't relax, you can't be vulnerable, you can't simply be. You spend hours calculating every word, pruning your own intelligence so as not to offend their mediocrity. The cost of walking through that door is extremely high. You leave pieces of your self-esteem and vital energy on their couch, just to keep up appearances. We've now reached the seventh place. Of all of them, this is the most dangerous, the most serious and unavoidable warning the universe has for you. The seventh physical place where you should never, under any circumstances, enter is the address of your own past failure, that specific geographical location where something within you broke deeply. It could be the street of your old apartment where you cried on the cold floor. It could be the building of that company where you gave your all and were discarded as if you were nothing. It could be the restaurant or the square where a conversation destroyed your faith in someone you loved. Physically returning to that space is a fatal trap for your analytical mind. When your feet touch that ground, your brain immediately restarts the loop of guilt. You begin to analyze what you could have done differently, where you went wrong in organizing your life, how you failed to foresee the tragedy. The ghost of who you were tries to take possession of the clarity you have gained today. You don't find answers by returning to the scene of the emotional crime. You only resurrect the pain. The universe tells you to keep moving forward and never turn back down that street, because your genius belongs to what you are building, not to the dust of what has crumbled. The physical past has heavy chains, but you don't need to be bound by them. To break free from this exhausting repetition, the divine wisdom that guides your zodiac sign to a purposeful life acts as a liberation manual. It gives you the tools not only to close the door, but to lock the door to places and memories that drain your potential, directing your brilliant mind only towards what builds your future. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Your nature is not a weakness. Your aversion to certain environments is not a whim, not fussiness, not something you should hide or cure as if it were an illness. What pulsates within you is a high-tech spiritual navigation system. You perceive the cracks in the world's structure because you were born with hands and a mind capable of building whole, pure, and solid things. When you begin to honor your nose, when you decide that your body and your presence are too sacred to be offered on altars of others' disorder, something magical happens. Your inner sanctuary stabilizes. By ceasing to try to process and fix the darkness of the wrong places, your natural light refocuses. It becomes focused, sharp, capable of illuminating the truths that truly matter. The universe did not give you this sensitivity so that you would suffer feeling the whole world. It gave you this so that you would know exactly where to build your own peace, unshakable, clean, and absolutely your own. Trust your discomfort. It is your greatest guardian. And when you begin to trust this invisible guardian, the entire dynamic of your existence changes. You begin to realize that your intuition, often disguised as a simple stomachache, tension in your shoulders, or sudden exhaustion, is actually a radar of millimeter precision. How many times have you tried to rationalize a bad feeling about someone, only to discover months or years later that your body was absolutely right from the first second? Your logical mind loves evidence. It begs for concrete proof before issuing a definitive judgment, simply because you are fair by nature. You don't want to be unfair to anyone, you don't want to be hasty, and you hate acting without a basis. But there is a cellular intelligence operating within you that transcends conventional logic. When the energy of an environment is contaminated by falsehood, by unspoken secrets, by nebulous intentions, or by incompetence masked as self-confidence, your nervous system triggers silent alarms. Don't try to silence these alarms with rational justifications or self-doubt. Your body is reading between the lines that other people's egos desperately try to hide behind rehearsed smiles. That's precisely why your relationships need to go through an unforgiving filter from now on. You have an unseen history of attracting chaotic people, not because you love chaos, quite the opposite, but because you are order incarnate. People who don't know how to manage their own lives look at your structure, at your formidable ability to plan, solve problems, and execute, and see a lifeboat. They cling to you, hoping you'll curate their emotions, organize the financial, moral, practical, and spiritual mess they've created through their own negligence. And for a while, your inherently helpful nature kicks in. You listen, you analyze, you propose logical solutions, you create veritable mental spreadsheets to try and fix the other person from the inside out. But listen carefully and engrave this in the center of your mind. People are not architectural blueprints. You didn't come into this world to be the manager of the existential crisis of someone who refuses to evolve. When you take on the unnecessary burden of fixing those who, deep down, don't want to be fixed, you drain the very life force that should be used to build your own empire. There will be times throughout this new journey when society, or even those who claim to love you, will try to label this new attitude of yours as coldness. They will say you are distant, that you have suddenly become selfish, that you are too demanding, and that no one will ever be good enough to meet your absurd standards. Let them talk. Embrace that label silently if necessary. What they call coldness is, in the purest truth, self-preservation. What they call unreasonable demands is simply you vehemently refusing to accept crumbs after having spent your entire life offering lavish banquets to those who barely knew how to hold cutlery. You are not cold, you are incredibly deep and intense. But you learned the hard way that your depth is a rare privilege, not a public right. Only those who can match your level of integrity, loyalty, and transparency deserve to dive into your waters. Everyone else can and should stay on the surface, dealing with your polite and impeccable courtesy, but without ever accessing the treasures that hold your true essence. By withdrawing your energy from this endless cycle of maintaining others' lives, you will finally discover the true magic that resides in your solitude. For many signs and personalities, being alone is a painful punishment, a deafening void from which they desperately flee. For you, the silence of a room with the door closed, where every object is in its proper place, where the light enters just right and there are no interruptions, is the pinnacle of absolute freedom. It is in these moments of unwavering quiet, far from the emotional demands and drama of an excessively noisy world, that your genius truly breathes a sigh of relief. Your mind, once occupied running simulations to predict the disasters of others and prevent them from falling, now has ample space to create, innovate, and dream with sharp clarity. Your love for routine, so often criticized as rigidity or lack of spontaneity, now reveals itself as the robust scaffolding that supports your greatness. While the rest of the world runs in chaotic circles, searching for fleeting motivation in empty places, you build your destiny brick by brick in the invisible and majestic discipline of everyday life. You always knew deep down that true transformation doesn't happen in dramatic bursts of emotion, but in the silent and relentless consistency of your well-structured habits. However, for this process to be complete, there is one final insidious ghost you need to exorcise: the chronic guilt of resting. Your internal machinery was meticulously designed for excellence and usefulness. If you are not producing something tangible, if you're not solving a difficult problem, optimizing a process at work, or physically organizing your home, a harsh voice whispers in the back of your mind that you are wasting precious time. But true and lasting excellence cannot survive on ground that has been parched by continuous exhaustion. Your rest is not a frivolous luxury, it is not laziness, and it is not weakness. It is the fundamental maintenance of your most precious machine, yourself. Learning to sit on the sofa and simply exist, without reading something productive, without planning the logistics of the following week, without mentally criticizing the invisible dust on the baseboard, is arguably your greatest spiritual and practical challenge. When you finally allow yourself this fertile void, your creativity not only returns, it restarts with a power you didn't know you had. The most brilliant and profitable ideas you will have will not come when you are pushing your mind to the breaking point, but rather in those rare and precious moments when you let go of absolute control and allow the universe to do the work of bringing the answers to you. Your destiny was never to be the martyr who bears the weight of the world on their shoulders while maintaining a perfect smile and a straight spine. Your undeniable destiny is mastery. It is to become a living, practical, and unquestionable example of how unwavering integrity, sharp intelligence, and non-negotiable self-respect can create a life of extreme quality and purpose.